This video, we're going to talk about how to multiply complex numbers. So when you multiply an imaginary number by a complex numbers, we're going to use a lot of the strategies that we did when multiplying polynomials. So remember, whenever we had a monomial that would multiply a polynomial, you just use a distributive property. So if you have 2x times 3x squared plus 2x plus 1, you just take that apart and do 2x times 3x squared plus 2x times 2x plus 2x times 1, which gives you the result 6x cubed plus 4x squared plus 2x. So we can use a similar strategy when we're multiplying a complex number by an imaginary number, but just keep in mind always that I squared is going to equal -1. So if we do 3i times 7 minus 4i, we're going to take that 3i and multiply it by 7. So 3i times 7 gives us 21i. And then we do minus 3i times 4i, which gives us minus 12i squared. That 12i squared, remember that I squared is -1, so that's going to make this a positive 12. So that's how we can rewrite it as 12 plus 21i. So let's look at an example. Suppose we have 5i times 2 minus 3i. So we're going to go ahead and multiply everything by 5i. So we have 5i times 2 minus 5i times 3i. So we have 5i times 2, so that's going to become 10i minus, and then we have 5i times 3i, so that's going to become 15i squared. So remember that I squared is -1, so this is going to become 10i minus 15 times -1. And so that's going to become 10i minus -15, but that minus -15, remember, we can turn that into a positive. So this is 10i plus 15, but remember, we want to rewrite it in standard form. So we have a plus bi. So we're going to write it as 15 plus 10i. So now you can go ahead and pause the video and try doing this example on your own. So here we do 2i times 6 plus 5i. So 2i times 6 gives us 12i. 2i times 5i gives us 10i squared. So we have 12i plus 10, and that I squared is -1. So that's going to turn into 12i minus 10. We rewrite it in standard form, so we have -10 plus 12i. So when you multiply complex numbers, remember, we're going to use something that we did when we multiplied polynomials, and that was we multiplied binomials using FOIL. So if you have 2x minus 3 times 3x plus 1, remember, we do first times first, 2x times 3x, so that's 6x squared. You do the outside 2x times 1, so you get 2x. Inside, -3 times 3x, so you get -9x. And then last, -3 times 1, which is -3. Remember, in the final step, you add up all the terms, so you have 6x squared plus 2x minus 9x minus 3. And so that 2x and 9x, those are like terms. We go ahead and combine them, so we have 6x squared minus 7x plus 3. So similarly, when we're multiplying complex numbers, we're going to use FOIL, but remember that I squared is always going to turn into -1. So we have 3 plus 4i times 2 minus 5i, so we do first 3 times 2, which is 6. Outside, 3 times minus 5i, which is -15i. Inside, 4i times 2, which is 8i. Last, 4i times -5i, so that's -20i squared. The I squared becomes -1, so this is basically -20 times -1, which is positive 20. Then finally, we add up all the terms, so we have 6 minus 15i plus 8i plus 20. 6 plus 20 combines to give us 26, and then minus 15i and plus 8i combine to give us -7i. So 26 minus 7i is our final answer. So now let's try with this example. Let's do -2 plus 7i times 5 minus 2i. So I'm going to write out FOIL. So we do first times first, so -2 times 5, which is -10. We do the outside, -2 times -2i, which is positive 4i. And then we do the inside, so we do 7i times 5, which is 35i. And then we do last 7i times -2i, which is -14i squared. -14i squared, well, remember, that's basically -14 times -1, which is equal to positive 14. So now let's go ahead and add up all our terms. So we have -10 plus 4i plus 35i plus 14. So now let's go ahead and combine our like terms. So we have -10 plus 14, which is 4, plus, and then we have 4i plus 35i, which is going to become 39i. So we have 4 plus 39i as our final answer. So now you can go ahead and pause the video and try doing this example on your own. So here we have first times first, so -3 times 2, which is -6. Outside, -3 times -4i, which is 12i. Inside, 2i times 2, which is positive 4i. And then last, 2i times -4i, which is -8i squared. So that's going to become -8 times -1, which is positive 8. Now we add up all our terms, so we have -6 plus 12i plus 4i plus 8. So we combine the like terms. Negative 6 plus 8 gives us 2, and then 12i plus 4i gives us 16i. So we have 2 plus 16i. So now let's try this example. It says 2 minus 3i squared. I just want you to remember that when you square something, you're basically multiplying it by itself, right? So this is basically 2 minus 3i times 2 minus 3i. So now let's go ahead and use FOIL. So let's write out all our terms. So we do first times first. So 2 times 2, which is 4. Outside, so we have 2 times minus 3i. So that's basically going to become a negative 6i. And then we have inside negative 3i times 2, which is negative 6i. And then we do last. So we do negative 3i times negative 3i. And that's going to become 9i squared. So 9i squared is going to become 9 times negative 1, which is equal to negative 9. So let's go ahead and add up all our terms. So we do 4 minus 6i minus 6i minus 9. So we do 4 minus 9, so that's negative 5. And then minus 6i minus 6i, so that's minus 12i. So negative 5 minus 12i is the final answer. So remember, you can multiply complex numbers using techniques similar to those we used when we were multiplying polynomials.